This documentary is about the trial of Sacco and Vanzetti. Sacco was born in Italy in 1891. He then emigrated to the United States in 1908 at the age of 16. Sacco met and married Rosa Zambelli in 1912 and a year later had their first son named Dante. Sacco worked as a shoemaker and a night watchman all until he got accused of the crime that he did not commit. Vanzetti was born in Italy in 1888. He emigrated to the United States in 1908 because of his mother's death. He didn't have a family or a wife because he could never be emotionally attached to another woman. He worked as a pastry man and a fish salesman for many years until his trial started.
In the 1920s, women's fashion was beautifully coordinated and accessorized with hats, stockings, handbags, dresses, and jewelry that all came together in perfect harmony to create a unique and elegant style that could only be appreciated when seen in real life or in color illustrations. They wore fabric dresses that were lighter, brighter, and shorter than ever. Men's fashion had changed just as radically as women's had. Younger men, in a switch from wearing the clothes of their elders, adopted a look all their own with baggy and wide-legged trousers. Suits were simpler with just slim, unpadded jackets over the trousers, and fabrics and colors were lighter and brighter than anyone had seen in years, reflecting the brightness of the music, theater, and good times. Some popular books in the 1920s were The Great Gatsby by F. Scott Fitzgerald, Their Eyes Were Watching God by Zora Hurston, and The Wasteland by T.S. Eliot. The 1920s earned their nickname the Roaring Twenties through the decade's real and sustained prosperity, dizzying technological advancements, and lively culture. The 20s marked the flourishing of the modern mass production and mass consumption economy, which delivered fantastic profits to investors while also raising the living standard of the urban middle and working classes. The Great Depression also started in the 1920s. There is a record number of schools. It was the era of the one-room schoolhouse. Towards the end of the decade, classes being united was the norm, and many of the one-room schoolhouses were replaced with larger united schools. For men, there were a decent amount of job opportunities. Some jobs they had were as farmers, manual laborers, and construction workers. A lot of women were given jobs as milk girls or domestics. These women began to perform clerical work in offices and retail shops and department stores. Working women began to smoke cigarettes as a sign of modern sophistication. Also during this time, women finally got the right to vote.
So now that you know about the 1920s, let me tell you about the trial of Sacco and Vanzetti. It all started on April 15, 1920, in a shoe company factory in Braintree, Massachusetts. Two men were robbed and killed while transporting the company's money in two large steel boxes to the factory. As being two Italian immigrants, they were believed to be followers of Luigi Galliani, an Italian anarchist who pumped up revolutionary violence, including bombing and assassination. They were found guilty in trials for 7 years until their last trial on April 1927, they were sentenced to death. During their trials, many people were against the court's accusation and wanted Sacco and Vanzetti to be free because they were in fact innocent. Then finally, after months passed, they were executed on August 23, 1927, through the electric chair. News of the execution sent hundreds of thousands of protesters into the streets all across the world. And now I will be introducing you to David Reyes, who does not want to be seen on camera, but he will be talking about the two commentaries of the Sacco and Vanzetti trial.
Okay, I read the two commentaries on Sacco and Vanzetti. One was written by H.G. Wells and the other was written by Howard.
Who is H.G. Wells?
H.G. Wells was a novelist and a historian that was involved in the campaign in Britain. His commentary about this case was in a collection of essays that he wrote in 1929.
So now, who is Howard Zinn?
Howard Zinn was also a historian who wrote this intro about the case in 1979.
Based on the two commentaries, which one makes a better argument?
Well, what I believe is that Howard Zinn's commentary makes a better argument compared to H.G. Wells' commentary. It's because in his commentary, he talks about the conviction, but then rewinds and goes over the so-called crime that Sacco and Vanzetti committed. H.G. Wells didn't really go over the conviction or the execution.
So in your opinion, which commentary suggests ways in which we can prevent an event like this from occurring again?
In Zinn's commentary, he talks about the words of Judge Thayer he used to describe Sacco and Vanzetti. Judge Thayer said, and I quote, "Did you see what I did to those anarchist bastards the other day? That will hold them for a while," end quote. Judge Thayer believed the two Italian men were just anarchists and should be put to justice and executed, even though there was no evidence whatsoever towards them. If present-day judges do not act the way Judge Thayer acted, then hopefully this unjust manner of intolerance will forever stop.
You may think to yourself, why is history relevant? Why learn about the past when we have our own problems in the present? We learn the lessons of the past so we don't make the same mistakes again, so history doesn't repeat itself. There are many special cases that have to do with racial profiling that are similar to Sacco and Vanzetti's trial. For example, Trayvon Martin, Troy Davis, Roy Wright, and many other people who've been accused of things that they haven't done. And in this generation, this is what we are. This is what we've come to. Kids can't even go outside to play without playing in fear. Kids can't go to school without being confident with who they are because they're scared of being judged. By the color of their skin? By what music they like? By what ethnicity they are? We need to make a stand. How could you hold your ground if everyone around you wants to bury you beneath them? You have to believe that they were wrong. They have to be wrong. Why else would we be here? What I wish more than all in this last hour of agony is that our case and our fate may be understood in their real being and serve as a tremendous lesson to the forces of freedom so that our suffering and death will not have been in vain. And to this day, the murder trial of two Italian immigrants, Nicola Sacco and Bartolomeo Vanzetti, was one of the most controversial legal cases in American history.